Let's travel back in time for a moment. Picture a small, dusty village, a place where everybody knows your name. Now imagine a specific home in that village, one that's usually filled with love and laughter, but has suddenly fallen silent, crushed under the weight of sickness. This is a story that goes right to the heart of our oldest, most primal fear, the cold, silent finality of death, and it asks a terrifying question. What happens when the one who claims to be life itself, the one person you trust with everything you have, shows up 4 days too late? What do you do when all your hope is just withered, when that heavy stone is rolled across the tomb and the scent of decay has already begun its grim work? Let's dive into this raw, powerful, and deeply human story.
You know, this right here, this is the real tension at the heart of the entire story. It's the question that just hangs in the air, as thick as the dust in that grieving village. On one side, you've got hope that feels, well, it feels like a distant promise on the horizon, right? Something you believe in for someday. But on the other side, you have this radical, almost unbelievable claim that the power to change everything isn't way off in the future, but is standing right in front of you, right now. We're about to see this exact conflict play out, not in some abstract theological debate, but on the tear-stained faces of two sisters.
So, our story begins in this small, sun-baked village called Bethany. It was just a couple of miles from the big, bustling city of Jerusalem, but it felt like a world away. For Jesus, this wasn't just another stop on his teaching tour. No, this was a refuge. This was home to 3 siblings he loved dearly: Martha, Mary, and their brother Lazarus. I want you to think of them as his chosen family. This was the one house where he could kick off his dusty sandals, share a real meal, and just be himself with people who knew him and loved him deeply. The sources really stress this. This wasn't the relationship of some famous teacher to his followers. It was a deep, personal, genuine friendship. And it's that bond, that very real love, that makes the silence that comes next so incredibly agonizing.
And then, crisis strikes. It shatters the peace of that little home. Lazarus falls gravely ill. We don't know exactly what it was, but we know it was sudden and it was bad. In their rising panic, the sisters do the only thing they can think of. They send a messenger to find Jesus. Just imagine that messenger running as fast as he can, dust kicking up behind his heels. Now listen closely to the message they sent. It is so simple, but it speaks absolute volumes. They don't command him, "Come at once." They don't beg or plead for a miracle. They simply state the facts. And in doing so, they appeal not to his awesome power, but to his loving heart. Lord, the one you love is sick. That's it. They believe that simple truth, that bond of friendship, is enough. It's this profound act of faith, just laying their broken hearts at his feet and trusting completely in their relationship.
Now, Jesus' response to this desperate, heartbreaking plea is one of the most stunning and, let's be honest, baffling moments in this entire account. Imagine you get that message. Your best friend is on their deathbed. Your first instinct is to drop everything and run, right? But Jesus doesn't. Instead of panic, he makes this calm, world-altering declaration. It's like he's seeing a completely different story unfold. From the very beginning, he completely reframes the situation. He looks straight through all the immediate pain, past the fever and the fear, and he speaks about the final chapter. For him, this isn't some tragedy in the making. It's a stage being meticulously set for a display of divine glory unlike anything the world had ever seen.
And this brings us to this key idea: divine orchestration. Because after making this incredible promise of glory, what does Jesus do? He waits for 2 whole days. He stays exactly where he is. Can you just imagine being Martha and Mary? Every single hour that passes, you're watching your brother fade away. You're straining your ears, listening for the sound of footsteps on the road, and all you hear is silence. From our human perspective, this delay is just baffling. It almost seems cruel. But in this divine script, the pause isn't neglect. Our sources call it a holy pause, a deliberate, intentional delay designed to let the situation completely unravel, to let it sink so far into despair that no human remedy could possibly fix it. The stage has to be perfectly dark for the light to shine its brightest.
Okay, let's just walk through this timeline because it really shows you the agonizing reality of that wait. On day 1, the desperate plea arrives. Hope is still alive. But then on days 2 and 3, Jesus waits. Back in Bethany, Lazarus' breathing is growing shallow, the light in his eyes is fading. And sometime during this divine silent wait, Lazarus dies. It's only then, on day 4, that Jesus finally turns to his disciples and says, "Okay, let's go." By the time he finally arrives in the village of Bethany, it's day 6. Lazarus has been in the tomb, wrapped in burial cloths, for 4 long days. The window for a simple healing didn't just close, it was sealed shut with a massive stone. All natural hope has been completely extinguished. The situation is now, by every human standard, utterly and irrevocably impossible.
So this brings us to the second act of our story, the confrontation. Jesus finally arrives on the outskirts of Bethany. You can almost feel the oppressive weight of grief in the air. The sounds of professional mourners wailing would have carried on the wind. And here we get that critical detail. Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days. Now, in that culture, this wasn't just a number. It was a theological line in the sand. It was widely believed that for 3 days, the soul of someone who had died might linger near the body, hoping for a chance to return. But on the 4th day, when the physical signs of decay began, that was it. The soul was gone for good. 4 days meant absolute, undeniable, irreversible finality. The door was locked, the story was over. Or so they thought. As soon as word gets back to the house that Jesus is near, Martha, always the practical, proactive one, the one who always had to do something, she can't stay put. She runs out to meet him on the dusty road, leaving the house of mourning behind. And her very first words to him, they're just a gut-wrenching mix of profound faith and profound pain. "Lord," she says, and her voice is likely cracking with grief, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Can you just hear all the layers in that one sentence? It's a statement of incredible faith. She has zero doubt that he could have healed Lazarus. But it's also an accusation. It's a question just soaked in the sorrow of his timing. She believes he holds the key, but she's absolutely convinced he arrived too late to use it.
What happens next is one of the most profound conversations in all of Scripture, a true crucible of the heart. Jesus looks at her and says gently, "Your brother will rise again." And Martha, being a good student of theology, gives the correct Sunday school answer. "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Do you see what she's doing? She has the right belief, but her belief is for the distant future. It's a correct doctrine, a far-off event on some theological calendar, and it offers her absolutely no comfort right now. And it's right here that Jesus makes one of the most audacious, powerful statements ever uttered. He doesn't say, "I will cause the resurrection." He looks at this grieving woman and says, "I am the resurrection and the life." He takes that abstract future hope and yanks it directly into the present moment, right there on that dusty road, and claims to be its very source, its very power. After this monumental "I am" statement, it's like the whole universe just holds its breath. He locks eyes with this heartbroken sister, and he makes it intensely, uncomfortably personal. He asks a direct, soul-searching question that just hangs in the air between them. Do you believe this? This is not a pop quiz on theology. This is everything. He's asking her, and really, he's asking every one of us to make a shift, to move from a safe, intellectual belief about him to a risky, life-altering belief in him, to trust not just in a distant future promise, but in a living, breathing, present power standing right in front of her. The entire story, maybe all of history, pivots on her answer to this single question. And just then, Mary arrives. Now, unlike Martha, she is just completely overcome. She falls at Jesus' feet and repeats the exact same heartbreaking refrain as her sister, "Lord, if you had been here." And seeing her raw, unrestrained grief and the wailing of the crowd that came with her, something shifts in Jesus. The text says he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. This isn't just sadness, it's a powerful, visceral reaction. And then we get the shortest and maybe the most profound verse in the entire Bible. Jesus wept. But why? I mean, he knows what he's about to do, so these can't be tears of hopeless despair. The sources suggest his tears are coming from 2 places. First, a deep human empathy for the pain of his beloved friends. But second, something more, a holy anger, a righteous fury against death itself, the great enemy, the thief that wrecks creation and brings all this sorrow. He's weeping at the sheer brokenness of it all.
And so we arrive at the climax of our story, the command of life. They lead him to the tomb, and it's a cave carved right into the rock, its entrance sealed by a massive, immovable stone. That stone is so much more than a barrier. It's a symbol of finality. It's the very weight of death itself. It separates the world of the living from the cold, silent domain of the dead.
Standing there, before this silent monument to death, Jesus gives a simple, shocking command. Take away the stone. The crowd must have just frozen in place. And it's Martha, the very one who just moments before had professed her belief in him, who immediately objects. And her protest is so human, so practical, so brutally real. "But Lord," she stammers, "there will be a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days." She's not trying to be difficult. She's trying to save him from embarrassment. She's pointing to the undeniable physical proof that this is over. She's reminding him of the ugly reality of decay. Her objection, it's the voice of our own rational doubts, isn't it? It's the voice of experience that tells us some things are just too far gone, too broken to ever be fixed.
Jesus turns to her, not with anger, but with a gentle rebuke that is also this incredible promise. Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? This is his final challenge. He's making it crystal clear. The act of believing has to come first. You have to be willing to roll away the stone of your doubt before you can witness the glory. The miracle is ready, but faith is the lens you need to be able to truly see it. And so, with heavy hearts and probably trembling hands, some of the men in the crowd put their shoulders to that massive stone and roll it away, revealing the dark, silent maw of the tomb.
And then comes the moment. Jesus looks up to heaven and speaks a prayer of thanks. Then he turns to the darkness of the tomb. He doesn't whisper some secret incantation. He doesn't perform some elaborate ritual, no. He fills his lungs, and with a voice that shatters the silence of that graveyard, he shouts a sovereign, royal command into the very heart of death's domain. Lazarus, come out. This is not a request. It is a thunderous decree. It's the voice of creation itself speaking to decay. It is life in the person of Jesus invading the realm of the dead with absolute, undeniable authority. The sources call this the intrusion of grace, a powerful, forceful reclaiming of what the enemy had stolen.
Can you just imagine the stunned, terrified silence that follows that command? People are holding their breath, and then, a shuffling sound from the darkness. A figure appears at the entrance of the tomb. It's him. The man who was dead, the man who was decaying, shuffles out into the daylight, still completely bound in his grave clothes, strips of linen wrapped tightly around his hands and feet, a cloth still covering his face. This incredible, almost gruesome detail is the irrefutable proof. He wasn't just revived on a deathbed, he was resurrected from the grave. He walked out of his own tomb, still dressed for his own funeral.
But look closely, because the miracle isn't quite finished yet. Lazarus is alive, but he's not yet free. He's hobbled, constrained by the very linens that signified his death. And so Jesus issues a second, quieter command, this time to the astonished, frozen crowd. Unbind him and let him go. This moment brilliantly illustrates a deeper truth. The new life, the resurrection power, it comes from a divine command. But often, it's the job of the community, the people standing right there, to help lovingly remove the old bondages. The miracle isn't truly complete until Lazarus is freed from the remnants of his past, finally able to walk and live fully in his new life.
So now we enter the aftermath, and it is not at all what you might expect. There's no universal celebration, no town-wide party. Instead, the reaction is immediate and it is sharply divided. For many of the eyewitnesses, seeing this undeniable miracle just shattered their doubts and led them to an immediate life-changing faith. But for others, the reaction was fear. The miracle was too big, too powerful, too disruptive. And in a tragic twist of irony, this supreme act of giving life becomes the key piece of evidence in a plot that will lead directly to death.
So how on earth did this happen? Well, this slide lays out the tragic chain of events. Some of those who witnessed the miracle didn't stay to embrace Lazarus. They ran straight to the religious authorities in Jerusalem to report what Jesus had done. And this news triggered a political firestorm. The Sanhedrin, the Jewish ruling council, called an emergency meeting. They weren't debating whether the miracle happened. They were terrified of its implications. They saw Jesus' growing popularity not as a spiritual revival, but as a political threat that could attract the unwanted attention of their Roman occupiers and completely destabilize their entire power structure. And in that tense meeting, the high priest, a man named Caiaphas, stands up and makes this chillingly pragmatic statement. He basically says, "You people know nothing at all. Don't you realize it's better for us that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish?" He's thinking purely in terms of political calculation. Let's sacrifice this one potential troublemaker to save ourselves. But the profound irony is that in speaking from a place of pure cynicism, he unknowingly prophesies the very heart of the gospel. He perfectly describes Jesus' true mission to be the one man who dies for the sake of all.
And that brings us to the ultimate resolution of the story, the final, stunning takeaway, substitutive redemption. The miracle of Lazarus, it wasn't the main event. It was the prelude. It was the catalyst that set in motion the final, unstoppable chain of events that led directly to the cross. In the end, Lazarus' life was given back to him, but it came at a price, the price of Jesus' own life. It was a divinely orchestrated exchange, one man walking out of a tomb in Bethany, so that just a short time later, another could hang on a cross outside Jerusalem.
It was the ultimate display of love.
And so this ancient story echoes down through time and leaves us with a final lingering question. And it's a question for all of us, right here, right now. The same voice that called Lazarus out of the tomb still calls people to new life today, a call to leave behind the things that bind us, the things that feel like death, our past failures, our old habits, our crippling doubts. So the question is, what are the grave clothes that you are still clinging to? The story of Lazarus proves it's not just about being brought back to life. It's an invitation, extended to us even now, to be unbound and to learn how to walk freely into the new life that's being offered.